Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari. Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari. Gopijana Vallabha Girivaradhari. Jaya Gopijana Vallabha Girivaradhari. Yashodanandana Brajajana Ranjana. Yashodanandana Brajajana Ranjana. Yamuna Tira Vanachari. Yamuna Tira Vanachari. Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari. Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari. Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna. Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna. Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare Rama, Hare Rama. Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari. Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari. Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari. Jai Mr. Pad, Paramahansa, Paravajagaracharya, Ashtottara Sri Srimad, His Divine Grace, Srila A.C. Bhakti Vedanta Swami Prabhupada, Jai. ISKCON BBT Founder Acharya, Srila Prabhupada ki Jai. Jai Om Vishnupad, Paramahansa, Paravajagaracharya, Ashtottara Sri Srimad, His Divine Grace, Srila Bhakti Siddhanta Saraswati Thakur ki Jai. Ananta Koti Vaishnavinda ki Jai. Namacharya Srila Haridas Thakur ki Jai. Shri Isopanisad ki Jai, Samaveda Bhaktivinoda ki Jai, All glories to the assembled devotees. All glories to the assembled devotees. All glory to the assembled devotees. All glory to Shri Guru and Gauranga. So I guess Damodar is sleeping it off, or chanting his rounds after sleeping it off. And our other members cooking? Cooking. A lot of cooking going on. Oh, Damodar's supposed to do it. Oh, I see. I'm sorry? Janardhan's cooking. Santosha's cooking. Janardhan is supervising. Anyway, here we are. All right, whatever. Let me get set here. We get to hear Isopanisad. Okay, wait a minute. Too much paraphernalia. There we go. Okay. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. On the second day of March 2020 in SanDiego, we're reading from Sri Isopanisad, translation and commentary by His Divine Grace, A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Prabhupada. Sorry about all this. And we are completing Mantra 13 today. Anyadevahu sambhavad, anyadahu rasambhavat, iti shushrumadhiranam, yenaschad vijachakshire, anyadevahu sambhavad, anyadahu rasambhavat, iti shushrumadhiranam, yenastad 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 vijachakshire. I know the members, Glenn and also Ramapati. They're also all in the kitchen. Oh, and Glenn is helping. Okay. Okay, all right. Translation. It is said that one result is obtained by worshipping the supreme cause of all causes, and that another result is obtained by worshipping what is not supreme. All this is heard from the undisturbed authorities who clearly explained it. And picking up this purport, the conviction that Krishna is all in all is established when one hears the transcendental message from the undisturbed Acharya with faith and love. One who has no faith in or love for Lord Krishna cannot be convinced of this simple truth. Those who are faithless are described in the Bhagavad Gita 9:11 as mudhas, fools or asses. It is said that the mudhas deride the personality of Godhead because they do not have complete knowledge from the undisturbed Acharya. One who is disturbed by the whirlpool of material energy is not qualified to become an Acharya. Before hearing the Bhagavad Gita, Arjuna was disturbed by the material whirlpool, by his affection for his family, society, and community. Thus, Arjuna wanted to become a philanthropic, non-violent man of the world. But when he became Buddha, more intelligent, by hearing the Vedic knowledge of the Bhagavad Gita from the Supreme Person, he changed his decision and became a worshipper of Lord Sri Krishna, who had himself arranged the Battle of Kurukshetra. Arjuna worshipped the Lord by fighting with his so-called relatives, and in this way he became a pure devotee of the Lord. Such accomplishments are possible only when one worships the real Krishna and not some fabricated Krishna invented by foolish men who are without knowledge of the intricacies of the science of Krishna described in the Bhagavad Gita and Srimad Bhagavatam. According to the Vedanta Sutra, Sambhuta is the source of birth and sustenance, as well as the reservoir that remains after annihilation. Janmadyasya yataha. The Srimad Bhagavatam, the natural commentary on the Vedanta Sutra by the same author, maintains that the source of all emanations is not like a dead stone, but is abhigya, or fully conscious. The primeval Lord, Sri Krishna, also says in the Bhagavad Gita 7.26 that he is fully conscious of past, present, and future, and that no one, including demigods like Shiva and Brahma, knows him fully. Certainly, half-educated spiritual leaders who are disturbed by the tides of material existence cannot know him fully. They tried to make some compromise by making the mass of humanity the object of worship. But they do not know that such worship is only a myth, because the masses are imperfect. The attempt by these so-called spiritual leaders is something like pouring water on the leaves of a tree instead of the root. The natural process is to pour water on the root, but such disturbed leaders are more attracted to the leaves than the root. Despite their perpetually watering the leaves, however, everything dries up for want of nourishment. Sri Isopanisad advises us to pour water on the root, the source of all germination. Worship of the mass of humanity by rendering bodily service, which can never be perfect, is less important than service to the soul. The soul is the root that generates different types of bodies according to the law of karma. To serve human beings by medical aid, social help, and educational facilities, while at the same time cutting the throats of poor animals in slaughterhouses, is no service at all to the soul, the living being. The living being is perpetually suffering in different types of bodies from the material miseries of birth, old age, disease, and death. The human form of life offers one a chance to get out of this entanglement simply by reestablishing the lost relationship between the living entity and the Supreme Lord. The Lord comes personally to teach this philosophy of surrender unto the Supreme, the Sambhuta. Real service to humanity is rendered when one teaches surrender to and worship of the Supreme Lord with full love and energy. That is the instruction of Sri Isopanisad in this mantra. The simple way to worship the Supreme Lord in this age of disturbance is to hear and chant about his great activities. The mental speculators, however, think that the activities of the Lord are imaginary. Therefore they refrain from hearing of them and invent some word jugglery without any substance to divert the attention of the innocent masses of people. Instead of hearing of the activities of Lord Krishna, such pseudo-spiritual masters advertise themselves by inducing their followers to sing about them. In modern times, the number of such pretenders has increased considerably, and it has become a problem for the pure devotees of the Lord to save the masses of people from the unholy propaganda of these pretenders and pseudo-incarnations. The Upanishads indirectly draw our attention to the primeval Lord Sri Krishna, but the Bhagavad Gita, which is the summary of all the Upanishads, directly points to Sri Krishna. Therefore, one should hear about Krishna as he is by hearing from the Bhagavad Gita or Srimad Bhagavatam, and in this way one's mind will gradually be cleansed of all contaminated things. Srimad Bhagavatam 1.2.17 says, quote, "By hearing of the activities of the Lord, the devotee draws the attention of the Lord. Thus the Lord, being situated in the heart of every living being, helps the devotee by giving him proper directions." The Bhagavad Gita 10.10 confirms this. I'll say you say, "Dadami buddhi yogam tam ye namam upiyanti te." Second half of the verse. The Lord's inner direction cleanses the devotee's heart of all contamination produced by the material modes of passion and ignorance. Non-devotees are under the sway of passion and ignorance. One who is in passion cannot become detached from material hankering, and one who is in ignorance cannot know what he is or what the Lord is. Thus, when one is in passion or ignorance, there is no chance for self-realization, however much one may play the part of a religionist. For a devotee, the motives of passion and ignorance are removed by the grace of the Lord. In this way, the devotee becomes situated in the quality of goodness, the sign of a perfect Brahman. Anyone can qualify as a Brahman if he follows the path of devotional service under the guidance of a bona fide spiritual master. Srimad Bhagavatam 2.4.18 also says, you know this one, Kirata Hunanda? Okay, I'll say you say. Kirata Hunanda Polinda Pukisha. He's got the device. Abhida Shumbha Yavanaka Sadayaha. Yenye Chapapa Yadapashayashaya. Apashayashaya. Shuddyanti Tasmai Prabhavishnave Namaha. Any low-born person can be purified by the guidance of a pure devotee of the Lord, for the Lord is extraordinarily powerful. When one attains Brahminical qualifications, he becomes happy and enthusiastic to render devotional service to the Lord. Automatically, the science of God is unveiled before him. By knowing the science of God, one gradually becomes freed from material attachments, and one's doubtful mind becomes crystal clear by the grace of the Lord. One who attains this stage is liberated soul and can see the Lord in every step of life. This is the perfection of Sambhava, as described in this mantra of Sri Isopanisad. Om Jnana Timirandasya Jnanandana Shalakaya Chakshu Unmidatam Mena Tasmai Shri Gurave Namaha. I was born in the darkness of ignorance, but my spiritual master Srila Prabhupada opened my eyes with the torchlight of knowledge. I offer my humble obeisance unto him and all members of Shri Parampara. This Isopanisad is very rich. So, just reminding us of the translation again. It is said that one result is obtained by worshipping the supreme cause of all causes, and that another result is obtained by worshipping what is not supreme. All this is heard from the undisturbed authorities who clearly explained it. Did I say Om Jnana? I did already. Okay. My memory is going, short-term memory. So, Srila Prabhupada is actually referring several times here to the section of the second chapter, first canto, that has the last 5 verses beginning with Shrunvatam Sukata Krishna Punya Shavana Kirtana. Riddhan Dakstra Yabadani Vidanoti Suritsatam. So Prabhupada begins his this part of the purport with this important. Oh boy, I've just messed things up. Give me a second here. Sometimes the books are better than this devices. Okay, sorry about that. Okay. One has to have the conviction that Krishna is all in all. And that is established when one hears the transcendental message from the undisturbed Acharya with faith and love. So there's several important points there. In order to practice bhakti, in order to enter into the house of devotional service, as Prabhupada says, house of bhakti, one has to have a conviction, maybe not a perfect conviction, but at least strong faith, that Krishna is actually the Supreme Personality of Godhead. So how does that faith come about? It certainly didn't come about before Prabhupada came to America. But because of his purity and his absolute certainty and his direct experience that Krishna is the Supreme, he was able to impart that faith into some fortunate souls who received the message in the right way. So this idea, the undisturbed Acharya, that's the Dhiranam, the Dhira. This word keeps coming up. Right in the beginning of Krishna's instructions, this verse oftentimes is the first one devotees memorize when they decide to memorize verses. So if you know it, let's chant it. Dehinosmin yada dehe komaram yovananjara tata te dadadan praptue dhiras tattanamuyate. So you get this one down, Glenn. Dehinosmin yada dehe. So a simple point Krishna makes, and it's a very wonderful verse because you don't have to know any shastra. You don't have to be well-versed in this or a big philosopher to understand it. All you have to do is think. As the living entity passes through different bodies in this lifetime, childhood, to middle age, or adolescence, middle age, old age. Similarly, the living entity, the dehina, you can easily remember that word, what it means. Dehina is obviously like deha, which means body, and in, what's in the body? The soul. So dehina is the soul within the body, an embodied soul. If you're in the spiritual world, you're not a dehina. As he passes through the many different bodies, Prabhupada always emphasizes this point. We're changing bodies even in this life. We like to say we're growing, right? Mother says, "Oh, my child is growing," and that's true to one extent. But actually, on a more fine level and understanding, is changing bodies. The body's changing, the cells are changing, right? And the appearance is changing, everything's changing. So you go changing. Similarly, at death, the soul passes into another body. Those who are dhira are not bewildered by such a change. Now, in the first translation we had, which Prabhupada did not give, this was taken from somewhere else, and it said, "Oh, the self-realized soul is not bewildered by such a change." But that's not the point Krishna's making. He's telling Arjuna, you should be dhira and not be bewildered and not be upset by the change of bodies of all these people that you need to kill in the battle. That's the purpose of it. So this idea of being dhira means basically, when it's referring to the acharya who's preaching, someone who is on the Brahmabhuta platform, is beyond the waves and whirlpools of all of this material energy, and whose knowledge is not covered by the modes of passion and ignorance. We forget, that's the whole thing of Maya. You forget how illusioned you can be by these different modes. Sometimes it becomes very obvious when you see someone who's deep in the mode of ignorance because they just take some drugs or drank, too much. In that situation, they don't know anything. They have a whole different view of themselves. Their natural personality or sober personality is covered over and distorted by this drug because their consciousness has been changed. So that's an extreme example, but the modes of nature are themselves doing that to people on a much long-term basis. And so the whole idea of God is rejected by many people. You've probably heard of this era, this phrase. Prabhupada brings it up sometimes in his books. Or God is dead, right? This idea is God is dead. Well, what does that actually mean when you think about it? Someone who says God is dead, his idea is that God was never alive, that the idea of God, the illusion of God, all these centuries and that we have history and all the religions are wrong. But now, with the advent of science, and we know what's what, we really know, about the atoms and all this. Now we understand. We can safely say that idea of God is dead. God was no more than a false belief among people, and now that's finally being eradicated by enlightened science. And you see how crazy that is. This is the mode of passion. Someone who's very intelligent and can formulate words and ideas, he can become a very good propagandist for atheism. And there are people like that, books they get on TV and they make arguments and everything. So this is what we're up against. This is what Prabhupada is up against. What all of the sincere servants of the Lord who preach God consciousness are up against. You're up against Kali Yuga, even the whole 5,000 years ago it started. The great sages who were dhira, they could see who was coming. And so they sat down in Naimisharanya, and Sutta Goswami came, and he had heard the Bhagavatam, and the Bhagavatam was then, come down to us, and finally in English, and we can understand what purports, to try to shine light and push back this ignorance. So, to get the conviction that Krishna is God, that we're his servants, and that our duty in life, our main and sole duty in life is to serve him, is very hard to get, but it can be gotten from hearing the transcendental message of the understood Acharya. How? And this is the first sentence that we just read. It's all in here. With faith and love. There has to be some appreciation, not, some appreciation of the person speaking, of his stature, his or her stature, to really receive that message and have it like sprout in the heart as a seed of a whole different way of life. One who has no faith and love for Krishna cannot be convinced of this simple truth. So, at least faith and love in Krishna's representative, Krishna as the guru, And so Prabhupada then quotes this famous verse, you could chant along. Avajananti mamudha manushim tanam ashratam padamba majananto mama bhuta maheshwaram. That those who are fools, they deride me when I appear in human form. They do not know my supreme nature as God. Manushim padamba majana mama bhuta maheshwaram. They actively deride me. They don't just have doubts. And these are the declared atheists who, And what's the result? They're fools or asses. All of their hopes are mogasha, moga karma, no moga jnana pache. This is the next verse. Their whole life becomes a failure, from that. Even though they seem to be very intelligent or rich or whatever it is. So that's a warning to us. We have to be receptive to the words of Krishna coming through the medium of the pure devotees. So now, now Prabhupada goes to Bhagavad Gita, that one who is disturbed by the whirlpool of material energy is not qualified to become an acharya. And if you're too disturbed, you're not qualified to become a student either. So he refers next to Arjuna from the Bhagavad Gita, who was disturbed by the material whirlpool, and then he defines it by his affection, by his emotional ties to his family, society, community, his guru. You read the first chapter there. So Arjuna was not, about to become an atheist or an out-and-out demon, but he wanted to become a philanthropic, non-violent man of this world, you see. So that in itself was illusory. He's got Krishna on the chariot. And what could be more stark is that Krishna wants him to fight, he wants him to kill, he wants him to produce a bloodbath. And that's good. That's good. Even though from our material, mode of goodnessy idea is that, that's horrible. And even when it happened, it was, if you read the Bhagavatam, after the whole battle was over and Pandavas had won, Yudhishthira was inconsolable at first. He saw all the dead bodies, not just of the the human beings, the soldiers, but the horses and the elephants. It was horrible. It was, he's a Vaishnava. So he doesn't want to rule, he's all disconsolate. So what's the solution? Do you remember what happens? He goes to Bhishma. Bhishma is holding his life in his body. You remember he could will when he was dying. So he shot through with all these arrows. Lying on a bed of arrows, couldn't have been very comfortable, lying on a bed of arrows. So he's waiting there. Now he's waiting for Krishna to come. So Krishna comes, and so many others come. Arjuna brings water. He brings water. He shoots an arrow into the ground, and the Ganges comes up. This is the power of Arjuna. So everyone's gathered around, and Krishna's there. Now Krishna could have enlightened Yudhishthira, speak to him, but he wanted to give that to Bhishma Dev, and Yudhishthira had such high regard for him. So he speaks to him, and in the Mahabharata, I understand, there's many chapters instructing him how to run the kingdom and why he should do it and so forth, and convinces him to actually take the post. It's very dramatic. So Arjuna wanted to become a philanthropic, non-violent, but when he became intelligent, in other words, by Krishna's association, by hearing the Bhagavad Gita, he changed the decision and became a worshipper of Krishna, who had arranged the battle. So in other words, it was contrary to everything that his gut was telling him, and you know what I mean? That his emotions were telling him. And he used his intelligence to get fixed on that platform where, even though it's a horrific activity which I don't want to do at all, I'll kill all these people and all these friends and everything, because it's the right thing to do. And part of it was the first lesson. Nobody's really going to die here. They're just going to change their bodies. I'm moving them on, and it's all auspicious because Krishna's here. So now, then Prabhupada goes into discussion of what real sambhuta means. This word comes up again and again in this Isopanisad. Sambhutyam, as the absolute truth, the Supreme Personality of Godhead. So Vedanta Sutra, he quotes this little sutra, the second sutra, Janmad Yasya Yataha. This is the Brahman that we're meant to inquire into. This is what human life is all about. It comes up in the second chapter again in those verses early on. Kama sinindriya priti labho jivatiyava jivasya tattva jigyasa nato yashchar karmabi. This jigyasa word is right there in the first sutra. Tato brahma jigyasa. What are we curious about? The human intelligence. You know, we have these senses. There's so many things that we're interested in. Now, just living without any proper instruction, of course, you become interested in varieties of sense gratification. This is the signals you're getting from the senses, from the mind. You get caught in that way. So we're always curious about something, and then as you grow older, you get, okay, I've got to be interested in something that's going to really give me enough money so I can enjoy sense gratification. The final goal. So you can be interested in so many different things, varieties, but all of that is diversion. All of that is diversion. You have to inquire into Brahman. What is that? Janma, the absolute source of everything. The source of birth and sustenance, as well as the reservoir of what remains after annihilation. So notice that Janma Adi. The Adi means etc. So whenever you have something material, such as this universe, this house, this body, this building, this body, whatever it may be, it has these three stages. It comes into being at some time. This Madanga was at one point undifferentiated, skins and whatever it is, But by someone's intelligence, it was brought into this form, and now it's having a function, and eventually it'll fall apart, dissolve. So birth, sustenance, and dissolution. So when you're talking about the asya, this whole universe, what's the source of the whole universe? What's sustaining it in the middle point? And what's going to be the reservoir in which it dissolves when everything is annihilated? That's what we're looking for. And so the Bhagavatam, the natural commentary on the Vedanta Sutra by the same author, Prabhupada always bring this up, maintains that the source of all emanations is not a dead stone or impersonal Brahman, but is abhigya. Now Prabhupada is quoting from the first line of the first verse. Notice that the Bhagavatam begins with the same words. Janmadyasya yaton vayad. You notice that? Janmadyasya yata. And of course, yaton, the sandhi changes. But that's the same sutra, second sutra. Now he's explained what it is. And it goes into a whole detailed description of Krishna, Vasudeva. So, Janmadyasya yaton vayad tadataschaitesva bhigya swarat. Abhigya means full of knowledge. You can't be full of knowledge unless you're a person. Right away, he's a person, And the whole first verse is about him, how he creates this world, and he bewilders all the demigods, and he's always in his own abode without its slightest disturbance and all that. It's describing Krishna. So, it maintains the source of all, is fully conscious. The primeval Lord Krishna also says in Bhagavad Gita 7:26, he is fully conscious of past, present, future. Balaram, you know this one. Vedaham samatitani vartamanani charjana bhavishyani cha bhutani mam tu vedana kashchana. We should learn that. So the whole 7th chapter could be learned. They're all important. So he's saying that I know everything in the past, I know everything that's happening now, and I know everything in the future, but me, no one knows. So somehow to me, that's the most amazing quality. When you think about what that takes. Everything that happened in the past, in all the universe, is inconceivable. And everything is happening right now. Everything, and what will happen in the future. So that's true omniscience. No one knows him, even Shiva and Brahma. They can't know him fully. And then Prabhupada starts wailing at the half-educated, quote, spiritual leaders who are disturbed by the tides of material existence. They're not Dhiranam. They're not Dhiras. They can't know him fully. Can they know him even partially? So these spiritual leaders, this is another symptom of the age of Kali. When you go to the Bhagavatam, right in the first chapter, we get this prayanopaya shaksabhya. Kalavasmin yugejana manda sumanda matayo manda bhagya upadrita. For the most part, here's the nature of the people in this age. All of these qualities. They don't live very long. That's the first thing. You don't have time to, develop your spiritual consciousness. But, and then even if, whatever time you do have, kalab asmin, you get manda, and they're lazy and uninterested in these matters. You know? It doesn't pertain. How does that pertain to my sense gratification? You know, you're telling me I got to give up this, give up that, give up that. You're crazy. You know, and that's it, blocked. You know? So they're vast majority, uninterested. And if they are interested, sumanda matayo, they're misguided. They become misguided by these so-called spiritual leaders. That's why Prabhupada is always wailing on this, because he was combating that tide of ignorance being spread by these so-called spiritual leaders. You know, there is an inherent thirst for the spirit, for Krishna, in every living being. And that's why they can't really stamp out religion. They tried in Russia, they tried in China, they're still trying, you know. But there's this need, people feel the need for some transcendence, for you know, some solace in their lives. And so they had, you know, all right, the Russian Orthodox Church, if we can't stamp it out, we'll control it, you know, they have the guys. But still, people go to church. And even the Russians, the Chinese, the Christians came in there, we came in there. But it can easily be distorted and misguided and channeled into all kinds of false things. And that's Prabhupada is talking about India here, later on. They're disturbed in material existence. They're in the modes of nature. They try to make some compromise. Okay, they want to worship something. Worship the mass of humanity. This is the Harijan thing. Prabhupada would talk about Harijans. When India became independent, you know, they decided to have a secular state because they have all these different varieties of religions and languages, you know. Hinduism is this big conglomeration that really, you know, just takes in the Shaivites and the impersonalists, the tantrics and all kinds of things. There's hundreds of them. So what are we going to do? Okay, we can't teach anything in the schools, you know. Everyone can go to school, but we can't, no religion in the school. But we'll start this secular religion, because this will help us. People will become kind, they'll give charity, they'll work for each other. This will be good for society. The whole thing was material. And I'll tell you, Russia had a big influence. It was Soviet Union at that time. Propaganda. Prabhupada talked about it. They would distribute all these pamphlets and they would affect people. That's why Bengal was a communist state till very recently. You know. That's why, anyway, I can go into detail. We had trouble getting land. We couldn't buy all the land. Oh, no, it has to be for the farmers. You know, so we had to do all kinds of things to get Mayapur land. So they don't know this so-called worship, the Harijans. In other words, people are Harijan. Harijan is a nice word. It means devotee. Someone who worships Hari. So we'll call the mass of people Harijans. It's become a word for the lowest in society. You know, something called untouchables. Great. And then the Dravida Narayan, that's another one. You know, you're worshipping Narayan in the form of this Dravida Narayan. It means it's someone who has no food or anything, so you're feeding the hungry. You're worshipping Narayan that way. Here's your Narayan. Prabhupada rails at that. Narayan cannot be Dravida. You know, he can't be poor. It's insane. So this is the so-called spiritual leaders. They don't know that such worship is only a myth because the masses are imperfect. Harijan, just to declare them Harijan and then serve them, you know, by helping bodily relationship, food and something. It's ignorance. It's hospitals. And then he gives the example of pouring water on the root. You know, if everyone comes to worship Krishna, you see that what happens is if you actually have a state in where people are getting the worshiping Krishna together, then the whole mode of passion and ignorance in which they're trying to exploit each other and the divisions, this family, this gotra, this language, this race, you know, is dissolved. And they automatically want to do their, you know, they perform their functions in varnashram, but they're charitable to each other. And anyway, the whole thing becomes workable then. Otherwise, if you've got all of these divisions, like in the United States, it's being torn apart by racism, which is latent since, you know, 400 years, and the inequality of the rich and the poor. You know, the whole thing is insane. So, but if you pour the water on the root, namely Krishna, you worship Krishna, then the whole tree of the society flourishes. Otherwise, you pour water on the leaves, and then it's crazy. Isopanisad advises to pour water on the root, source of all germination, Krishna. The worship of the mass by rendering bodily service, which can never be is less important than service to the soul. All right, medical aid, social help. But still, they maintain slaughterhouses. So, because this whole verse is about what to worship. Those who worship actual God, then they do well. But if you worship something else, you go elsewhere. That's the basic principle. It's there in the Gita also. Real service to humanity is rendered when one teaches surrender to and worship of the Lord with full love and energy. And that's what Prabhupada did. And he's doing it to this day. This whole TOVP is coming together. You know, it'll be a huge center, international center for propagating bhakti. And how to worship him? Simply hear and chant. Best to hearing and chanting is kirtan. But also hear and chant about Krishna's great activities. When you hear and chant about Krishna's activities, his form and name, then when the kirtan comes, the name Krishna carries all of those things, you see? If I mention, who should I mention? That's not going to pollute the atmosphere too much. Okay, Mother Teresa. Okay? So as soon as I mention Mother Teresa, you have some image, and then it's all the charitable stuff that she did, there's some idea, So that's the idea. If you know something about the person, the more you know, and then when you chant the name gives you access and reminds you of all the qualities. That's the name, form, qualities, and activities. Then again, he probably blasts the so-called spiritual masters. They tell that their followers should worship them. We've seen that. That's the worst. Worship them as God. It's disturbing just to think about it. And finally, let's see. Okay, I have a few minutes. The Upanishads. Now, the Upanishads, the Isopanisad he's speaking about, they indirectly draw our attention to the primeval Lord. There's no mention of Krishna's name here. I mean, from the beginning, Om Purnamadak Purnamidam, the complete is Krishna. There's a verse, Hidanmanena Patvena Satyasyahipitam, to please withdraw, this is coming up at 15, I think, withdraw your effulgence so I can see your beautiful face. Obviously, he's talking about a personal God there. That's why it's the Isha. But there's no name of Krishna. There's no Leela here. So he says the Upanishads indirectly draw our attention to Krishna. But the Gita, which is the summary of the Upanishads, notice if you look at the half-title page, you'll see Gita Upanishad. Right? It's Gita Upanishad. Directly points to Krishna, the Bhagavad Gita. And Bhagavatam is full of Krishna Leela. We know that. So one should hear about Krishna as he is by hearing from Gita and Bhagavatam, and then one's mind will be gradually cleansed of all contaminated things. And Prabhupada refers, by hearing the activities of the Lord, he draws attention of the Lord. This is Srinvatam Sukata Krishna Punyashavana Kirtana Karidyan Taksto Yabhadrani Vidunoti Suritsatam. These verses Prabhupada would quote again and again. The whole book, The Dharma, The Way of Transcendence, that we produced, was based on the 1-6 through 1-21, which includes this verse 1-17. And so what happens? By hearing about Krishna sincerely, Krishna from within the heart, he's cleansing away the abhadras. And then that verse I chant every morning when I give class, Nashta Prayasha Abhadreshu. When the abhadras are almost gone, not completely, but a high percentage, Nityam Bhagavat, by always serving the Bhagavatam, by hearing and by repeating, by distributing, worshipping, and worshipping the Mahabhagavat, the great devotee, then the lower modes of nature, you transcend them. You're moving up, to the mode of goodness and even the mode of pure goodness. And then that tadarajastamo bhava kama lobhadesya, the concomitants of those modes, greed and lust, which for the materialists is all consuming, controlling their everything. So you're transcending those. That means that the lower modes are not bothering you as much. And you become fixed in goodness. And at that stage, become naturally joyful. The natural joy of the soul, anandamayo bhyasat, whereas full of ananda naturally, but it's been covered for millions of births. So that's evam prasanna manaso bhagavat bhakti yoga, by the process of bhakti. Bhagavat tattva vijnanam. You get realized knowledge, direct experience of the truth of Bhagavanam, all these things. Mukta sangasya jaya, and liberated from all attachment to this world. And then the last verse in the series, 21, which, to get the accurate translation, you need to consult your latest Veda-base update, or the latest printing of the little 1-8 Bhagavatam we've been printing out, little teaser Bhagavatam book, individual book. It's in there. Thus, Vidyate Vidya Grantis, when in this way all the knots in the heart are cut. Remember these famous knots? These are our attachments. They're cut. Vidyate Vidya Grantis. All the doubts are eradicated. And all your karma is eradicated, and at that point, one sees oneself as one's master here in the heart. In other words, you see God, you see Krishna, and you understand your own relationship to God, so you're seeing yourself. One sees oneself and one's master, Krishna. So Prabhupada is describing all that here, and he's all the way. And the next thing is Kirata Hunanda. Now this was a very inspiring verse for Prabhupada, because to take on this impossible mission impossible, let's call it, right? Of, spreading Lord Chaitanya's truth all over the world, starting in the lowest spot in New York City. He needed encouragement, and it was coming right from Bhagavatam. Kirata Hunanda Pulinda Puka. These are all outcasts, meaning that they're outside of India. They're fallen. I forget the Kiratas. The Hunans are the Huns, Andras, Pulinda Pukasha, Shumba, Yavana. The Yavanas are the Muslims, basically. Kasadiya are the Chinese. Not just the Chinese, Mongolians, all of that. They're outside of India. They're not part of the Vedic culture or anything. So he says, all of these who otherwise have no hope, they're sinful, papa, but they take shelter of one who's taken shelter of Krishna. This is the point. This is the word that we were tripping over, apashraya. It's ashraya, taking shelter, ashraya, of the ashraya. Shudyanti, they become purified. And Prabhupada proved it. He proved that by coming to America and finding a few souls who would take up the chanting in the process and had respect for him, and and they became purified. And now you go every corner of the world. There's one Bhakti Vaibhava Swami. He's originally German, and he's been at GBC for many years. He decided, all right, I'm going to preach in Mongolia. No one's ever gone there. I mean, they go to China, but Mongolia is, So he's got a center going in Mongolia, and there's the temple there. You got the Mongolians anywhere, Africa, everywhere. Prabha Vishnave, I offer my obeisance to the powerful Vishnu. Only Vishnu could do this, to transform the soul from within, from sinners to saints, in one lifetime or a short amount of time. So, any low-born person can be purified by the guidance of a pure devotee of the Lord, for the Lord is extraordinarily powerful. This is how the devotees can do extraordinary things, by channeling the Lord's power, by themselves becoming empowered to instill faith and tolerate all of the, impossible austerities that are necessary to inspire, instruct, and bring along and build temples and all these things. And when one attains brahminical qualifications, this is prasanna manaso, one becomes naturally happy and enthusiastic to render devotional service to the Lord. Automatically the science of God is unveiled before him. Now Prabhupada is speaking from realization here. By knowing the science of God, one gradually becomes freed from material attachments, and one's doubtful mind, this is the last verse that I just said. The doubts, you see, doubts are gone. Material attachments, vidya granti, chidyanti, and the doubt becomes crystal clear by the grace of the Lord. And when it attains this stage, is a liberated soul and can see the Lord. This is it. See the Lord, see? Atmanishvare, in himself and in every step of life. This is the perfection of sambhava, as described in this mantra. Sambhava, sambhuta, worshipping God. It's a great purport. You can write a book on this one purport. Any comments, questions? Yes, Prabhu.
Hare Krishna. Thank you for the nice class. So, we frequently, this is just a comment by the way, so we frequently are reinformed of these vices which are present in society, such as material society, exploitation, discrimination, or cheating, just these basic vices that we see predominating in the material world. And you're discussing these cultures in which like religion was banned, basically, the Soviet Union or China.
They tried to, yeah.
Yeah. And you had mentioned how this need for solace or transcendence is a natural or integral part of the person. And I was thinking, last night I was, somebody was helping me clean the kitchen after the Sunday feast. And we were talking, he was talking about how he may have to move because his work partner is like narcissistic, and he like has this big cheating propensity or whatever. You can't. Anyway, there's more to it than that, but you can't really get around it, and it's hard to deal with or work with. And I was just thinking about that in terms of being the association of devotees. Again, you're mentioning this solace that people need. And one of them that I was thinking about was we kind of forget about these. When we enter the association of devotees, we forget about these vices, this exploitation or this discrimination based on the body or the cheating propensity when we enter the association of advanced Vaishnavas, because they're not treating us like that. They're not on that basis. Yeah, they're not relating to us on that basis. They're not saying, "Oh, you should be this way. You shouldn't be that. You should be." Well, they are, but not in a material, bodily sense. But anyway, so I was thinking about that last night and today, and how I appreciate it, because it's when we have solace from those things, it is there's a lot of anxiety caused by it in the outside world, because it's very competitive. You're always competing against somebody. But when we come into sadhu sangha, you forget about those things.
So one of the most important things is the simple fact that, because I remember when I first came to the temple, and I not just first came to the temple, but I actually hung around a little bit. I did a little service and was associated with devotees, because sometimes you come to the temple, you check it out, and then you leave, you're not really sure what to make of it. But I was already chanting a little bit, reading a little bit, so I was interested in, And the wonderful aspect of the devotees was that, because they love to talk to you about Krishna, and they'll make friends with you, this is what we should do, someone comes to it. And you just got this sense, there's no undertow of exploitation here, that they're trying to sell you something or trying to, run a scam on you or anything like that. Whereas out in the material world, that's all there is. You notice that they try to be like that, the advertisements and everything. They try to set up this mood that they really want to help you. There's a sale on now, and you've been chosen. Whatever they have all kinds of techniques. But it's just they're just trying to get in your wallet. They're just trying to. But you get the sense of the devotees. Here, coming down. I remember one devotee would take me downstairs. It was the prasadam hall was under the temple room. Imagine the whole prasadam hall under this temple room. He just wanted to give me some prasadam and preach to me. Give me some information about Krishna. And it was just an important part of my visit. I knew that at the end, after I'd checked out this and I'd gone here and I maybe sat a little bit, chanted and read a book, then I would get some prasadam with Gadaguraja Prabhu. And he would tell me about Krishna, and he would make friends of me, And that simple act, and that's why Prabhupada knew the importance of prasadam, giving out. I mean, the Sunday feast was always traditionally free. It just enters people's hearts. It makes them receptive to the actual philosophy, because it's something unique. In the material atmosphere, especially Kali Yuga, you have your defenses up all the time, really, in order to survive. And that's a tremendous strain and kind of, it's not healthy for the soul to be in that condition, So that's an essential part of the whole preaching mission, is to set up an environment that's welcoming, that's friendly, that's caring, and people feel that. They may not know anything about the philosophy, but they met someone there who was different, who was unique, who you want to meet again, So that's you're right. That's an essential part of it, and Prabhupada is speaking about it here in terms of no. You can't just have an ethos, have a society in which everything is okay. You try to establish this charity and help people, But then it becomes like they have in India now, we're helping one class of people, but a whole other class, like 200 million of them, we're now at war with. It's insane. It's tearing the place apart. So that unfortunately happened in America, and it's always a battle to keep that. That's the lowest mode of ignorance. This judging people just by the color of their skin or where they came from or anything like that. And that's what we're combating with the philosophy, the chanting, the whole movement. And it's worth giving our lives to. It's very pleasing to Krishna, Lord Chaitanya. All glories to Srila Prabhupada. Anyway.